So I'm trying to help them with their businesses, and nobody knows how around here. They know how on the coast, they know how in Texas, they know how in Germany, but they don't know how in the Midwest. So I'm like, why don't you let me take a crack at it? What somebody told me, when I first started was fail fast. So I just started failing, basically, and then as you fail, okay, that's not the way to do it. Okay, that's not the way to do it.
You always pick something out of that failure.
And then you overcome that. So then you start to build till now you have a product that people are asking you for.
There we go.
I've done one podcast.
Yeah,
online.
was it there? Oh, it was online.
Yeah, it was online. They did it online, and they had it, and it was like an automation. It's called raw automation, and it was, as I enjoyed it, but it's very raw. It's just talking about engineering stuff,
right?
And I had not a whole lot of. I don't say high quality,
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just a couple of engineers that like to talk. There's probably, but they said that my episode was the best one that they had.
Let's go.
Yeah,
we like that.
Yeah, so,
podcast wise, like I did not realize how much work. If you want to put in like a true podcast like this, the amount of production, the amount of pre-production, it's especially as a one man band, it's a lot. It is a full-time job in itself. It really is. Like, I'll be here today editing yesterday's and then probably today's I'll probably be here till 6, 7, 8.
how do you drive value out of this? Advertising?
No. So the back end is all video editing services. So with this is all part of my, we'll record this. This is all part of the sales process, right? So my cold calling isn't cold calling to get people to want to do video services for social media. My cold calling is getting people onto the podcast. This becomes part of the sales process. We get to have a really great one-to-one. I get to learn a lot about what you and your team is doing, what your goals are, what you haven't been able to do yet, and I can ask questions, qualifying questions. Have you guys touched $1 million yet? Like, that's a goal that I want to do, and so I get to ask these questions, and then afterwards, I'll take it, break it down into 5, 10, 11, 12 clips of the person for social media. And that'll be the free lead magnet. And with that lead magnet comes an offer letter. That offer letter, very simple. It's a one-pager. I only have one offer. It's $1,200 a month. It's weekly content, anywhere from 7 to 10 videos per week, and then me coming out and capturing content for an 8-hour period of time.
Oh, man, I hope that I could pay you that someday. That would make me very happy.
You know what I mean?
And I think I would do well in that world.
Yes.
If I learned, because I see the people that do what I do and speak on social media about it, they aren't particularly good.
Yeah.
Like engineers, and especially around manufacturing, are not particularly skilled at explaining that or, driving excitement around manufacturing as in some of other industries,
Yeah.
So.
And it helps when you have someone there, like, who doesn't know, and I can sit there and I can ask you questions about what you're doing while you're working and showing the work, and you can explain it, like, at the same time. Because people don't necessarily want to see, like, the end result most of the time. They want to see how it was done. Mm-hmm. So if you, like a car detailer, if you can get in there with, like, a brush and you're scrubbing stuff down and you slow it down and you make it into, like, this really cool, intense sound focused video of ASMR, boom, you have a little clip, and that shit is what people like.
Manufacturing, when they boom, boom.
Right?
Boom,
that
boom,
stuff.
Boom. Yeah, it's really cool. Like, the people that watch that stuff, for a little bit, you could go through my phone from, like, 2 months in my life where I thought, oh, this is going to be cool, but I don't have the patience to do that. I'm an engineer, but it's like, this is cool. Like, I think watching this thing repeatedly doing this thing is a neat thing to look at, and people were, like, clicking on them a lot,
And I found it very fascinating when I was in the aircraft industry, where it was like the things that we got to do, the process, the line of process from full stock to, like, intricate 5-axis created part. I always thought that was really cool. And then watching, like, a CNC machine going balls to the wall and rapid, just cutting and going insane, like, that's a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah,
You can just sit there, like, it's like a fire. Mm-hmm. You just kind of stare at it and you watch it and you hear the hum of the
hum or the repetitive clink clack, clink clack, clink clack, clink clack. Where it's the same sounds of that bearing, that bushing, that belt, that ejection thing. Is people like that?
Yeah.
Like,
It's fascinating. They don't get to see it often. You know, a lot of normal people don't work in manufacturing. That's not like, well, a lot of people do, but like, you know, blue collar jobs, stuff of that nature, like they don't get to see how it's made. One of my favorite shows actually when I was growing up, and I think it's still on, was on the Discovery Channel, How It's Made. Are you familiar?
Yeah.
I could
Same
sit
thing.
there
Like
and
I'm
watch
watching
that
that
forever. I could watch that over and over because it's how this microphone was made. I don't know all the stuff that was put in it in the process. Watching it is just amazing. I think it's so cool.
Yeah.
And on that note, welcome back to another episode of Networking with Nick. I'm leaving all of that in because it was awesome. We're down here at the Colony. It's a beautiful Wednesday here in Wichita. And today I have an amazing, intelligent man with me. This is Anthony George of GCE. Tony, how are you doing today, man?
I'm doing great today. How are you doing, Nick?
I'm doing great because I am excited to learn from you. You have some very interesting knowledge of engineering that's going on. And my first question I do want to ask, are you from here? Are you a Wichita local?
I am. I grew up in Rose Hill.
Okay.
I left for the Navy at 18, right when I graduated high school, but I came here after the Navy and then left here and there, various engineering roles throughout the world.
Oh.
And then came back here 2 years ago. Last place was in Italy. Came back, finished raising my family here. My daughter's in college now. My oldest son's a junior in high school, freshman at Cali, so he's pulling double duty there. And then my youngest son, Hunter, is a sophomore in high school.
Man, so you got three of them.
Three of them. And they go back out to school in Rose Hill, so they're going to graduate the same high school that I graduated from, despite being raised partially in Italy, partially in Virginia, partially in Texas, partially in Kansas. So
that's great. So they got to travel with you through that a lot of the experience bouncing around.
Yeah, they did.
How'd they like that?
They liked it, so they weren't always with me. I'm divorced, so they weren't always with me, so it depends.
Right.
But when I was in Italy, they came. I was there for a year with my wife without them, and then they came a year later, and then off we went. One kid went to Italian technology school. And
what the heck?
Yeah, and one went to American high school, one went to American middle school. So we tried to live the Italian life the best that we could. I was working for the United States government at the time, so I had options to go on military bases for schooling. And my high school daughter didn't want to attend Italian schools, because she had made friends over the summer, on the base. And then, but my youngest son. He was ready to go. So
really,
yeah, off he went to Italian technology. It was an international school, so it was a school designed to prepare kids for basically colleges in America.
And I think that's a big thing that happens everywhere. Like China does that. A lot of Europe does that. They prep their kids to get ready to come to American colleges for the education, and then they either go back or they stay. Is that like a heavy culture over there, like really trying to get their kids to go to America to learn?
Oh, man, the culture's quite different there, for sure. I will say what's different is public and private schools there. Private schools are the lower end and public schools are the higher end.
Huh?
Because as a young age, you are actually identified as having certain skills in certain areas and pushed more into those areas.
Right.
So if you score low, or what I would consider low, like in science and technology, you would be pushed more towards like hospitality or something, or if you scored high in hospitality. But so you want to get into the best public schools that you can. So you want your kids to score high. But if they don't score high, they don't get into good public school, then they go to a bad public school. And then the option is to go to a private school. So if you want your kid to be successful still, you can send them to a private school into some of these, although that's not the school that he went to. That's the traditional model. The school he went to was an international school, international baccalaureate school, designed to prepare your kid for international college and business.
So at a young age, they assess children to see kind of what their skills are, and then they start to push them down those paths, and they have designated school teaching, like curriculum for those types of personality, skills, and learning types?
Yeah, 100%.
Why the hell don't we do that?
We believe in freedom.
We do.
I mean, if your kid doesn't score well in the 8th grade on technology, he or she or them or whatever is destined to whatever is assigned by the state, essentially. I mean, you have some options at that point, but you're eliminated from some options at that point. So they're not going to become a doctor. They're not going to become, because they're not going to get into those schools that would enable them, because they almost start their secondary education right there in high school, where we would consider that a collegiate thing.
Yeah.
You know, they would start that as a ninth grader, as what we call it. They don't use the same system. But
They don't do like a K through 12 type deal like we do?
no, it's you got me on the spot here. I don't know exactly. I don't remember their actual numbering scheme, but it's not a middle school, high school deal. It's like a primary, secondary, and then university, I think, is the way they. And university starts when you're like 18. Like, so you're normally a senior, you'd start university. I don't know too much about it. You know, my kid was in middle school.
Yeah.
And it was an awesome experience, you know. And it was a science and technology school. So it was a science and technology school designed to prepare kids to enter that into the world market.
That's so cool, because I think that's very interesting. As I think it's like a little bit of a double-edged sword, right? Because if you have ambitions for something, you know, but you don't test well for it, you know, you do get kind of blocked out. And it sounds like, from what you've said, is like, you know, here in America, if you fail, like, you can get the fuck back up and try it again. You can keep going and going and going until you make it, right? Mm-hmm. And that freedom aspect, like, yeah, you failed, but you get to choose if you want to continue that path. It doesn't sound like that they're really allowed to do that as much.
I mean, if your parents have money, you still have the freedom to move to a private school to
money
get the
helps
education.
Everything.
Yeah,
money helps everything. It's
universal language.
It doesn't matter what country you're in.
Although they gladly accepted my American dollars for tuition, but they do.
Really?
Well, no, you know, convert them over.
They make you convert them?
Yeah, convert them.
No.
But it was 1-to-1 back then, so it was okay. Wasn't too bad.
Who's ahead right now? Us or them? On the it's like it's always
them.
close.
It's close. I think
$1.08 or something like that.
like right around there. Yeah, I haven't been in a year now, which I'm itching to go back. But
I was gonna ask, like, do you miss that being over there?
Yeah. I certainly miss being over there. There's parts I miss and there's parts I don't miss. COVID lockdown was.
Were you there for
governmental?
COVID?
Yeah.
It was bad in Europe for COVID.
And then I was in the region that outbroke.
Oh,
so
no.
I was in ground zero for Italy, where we took the biggest hit. So basically, to explain why this happened in Italy briefly, is I put my young son on a city bus to go to his school.
Right.
When he got on that bus, he was on that bus with 100 other kids, city bus. And they're all packed in their little uniforms. They go to school.
Right.
They get out of school, they come home, and they go live in multi-generational family homes.
I was going to ask about that.
And then they kiss each other to greet each other. You know, like, you know, traditional things. They share meals. They sit together. They're very close culturally.
Yeah.
So, and their population is really old or older. And they smoke. But they are really healthy in a lot of other ways. But as we learned about COVID, that the smoking, being older, you know, and then the transmission of, you know, the way they did it, you know, it hit them real hard because we didn't know how to treat COVID back then. And so the region I lived in took heavy loss of life during that time, Lombardy region. I lived in the Veneto region, but Lombardy's right next to it, so it's like states. Kansas, Oklahoma type deal.
I remember Italy was on the news a lot because of their death toll. Like, they got beat up pretty bad during that.
I was losing neighbors and stuff, yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah. It was quite a bit of different experience than we had in America, because I was actually activated by the military during that time for a cyber mission.
Really?
Yeah. So I had to leave my family actually in Italy during that time. But I came back because we couldn't get out. I could barely get out. Like, I had to go to the airport with all this forms and stuff filled out.
Like, hey, I'm an actual, I have to leave. I have
to
government
leave.
stuff.
Even when I went to work, I had to carry these papers and stuff, and there was literally police roadblocks and that kind of stuff.
That's scary.
I had a 100-meter limit around my home. That was after I was allowed to leave my home. So there was a period of like probably 3 months where you couldn't leave your home except for one person from your family once a week could go to the grocery store. That was it. And then they let it to where you could go 100 meters around your home, and then you had to stay in your community. And then they started to open up from there. But it took years.
Yeah.
Years. I remember I was working in American Italy at the same time, so I was going back and forth, and it was drastically different how both places treated me like I had, whatever.
Patient zero.
Yeah, patient zero came in from Italy, and patient zero came in from America. So I was quarantined actually probably more than anybody that I knew. Every time I flew, which was once a month, I was quarantined for 2 weeks.
Oh, dude, that would drive me nuts.
Yeah. Yeah. Then when I came back to Wichita, the military made me wear a mask because I was patient zero. And I'm out here shopping at Walmart before anybody else even has masks on. People are saying stuff to me and judging me. Like, look, I don't want to wear this mask, you guys. The military requires that I wear this mask. And then like 5 days later, we're in lockdown. Everybody's wearing masks, you know.
Yeah, I remember pretty vividly. It wasn't horrible here in Wichita through like the thick of it. Like I remember there was a point in time like I was out at a bar or a restaurant. I can't remember. I had a beer in front of me, and I had called my sister. She's in Seattle, and where I'm originally from. And I was like, "Hey, what are you doing?" She's like, "Nothing. I'm at home." I was like, "Oh, that sucks." She's like, "What are you doing?" I was like, "Drinking a beer." She's like, "Where?" "At the bar." She's like, you guys have things open? We're limited capacity. Like, we can't have a whole bunch of people in. And there's weird rules about having your mask on when you come in. But if you're at a table and drinking, you can take it off or whatever. And she was, like, dumbfounded. Because in Seattle, dude, it was kind of like what you're saying. Like, it was a straight up, like, you can't do nothing. It's all closed down. Stay home. That was the deal.
You couldn't eat at restaurants if you didn't have your vaccination card.
In Italy?
Time. Yeah. Yeah.
What?
Yeah, they wouldn't let you eat in a restaurant. They wouldn't. I mean, they wouldn't let you ride trains and stuff. Yeah,
unless you showed that you.
Unless you showed you had your card. You know.
Oh,
yeah.
Dude, that'd be a fight here in America.
Oh yeah,
that'd be a fight.
I moved back to America.
Yes.
So
we'll keep Italy on the burner to go back and visit.
But I went back 2 years ago. Rode a 100-kilometer in a few days with my friend for his 40th birthday. You know, I miss the country, I miss the food, I miss the lifestyle, I miss the, you know, dolce vita, as they say, the pace of life. Sweet life is what it means, but it's the pace of life. You know, if you want your plumber to do something quick, it's not going to happen because he's enjoying his life, smoking his cigarettes and drinking his coffee. It's just a slower pace of life there. It takes a little bit to get used to as an American. You know?
This is why we're number one. We don't do that.
Yeah, we don't. Yeah, that's true.
We really should slow things down to some degree. But at the same time, I mean, like, our go for it work ethic's kind of what's put us here. Mm-hmm. I ain't gonna lie, I like it up here. And it ain't bad.
The Germans will judge the Italians on their work ethic, and the Northern Italians will judge the Southern Italians on their work ethic. Yeah. Germans work hard. Germans
are some tough sons of guns.
The German train is on time every time. The Italian train comes around the same time that's supposed to be there. You know, it's just the difference in the cultures.
It is so crazy because they're so close compared to, like, say, you know, from here to Seattle. You know, like that's almost all of Europe from like half of America all the way to the West Coast. And they're so close. It's weird to see them like fight those cultural differences.
Yeah,
because they should be all relatively similar, to some degree.
They believe strongly in a lot of like close community. So there is quite a bit of variation between the regions still in that. You know, even if you go down to Sicily won't build a bridge into Italy because they don't want to lose their Sicilian culture anymore, and the bridge will cause them to lose some of that culture and be mixed in. Because you remember Italy. Not you remember, like, you know, but...
Give me a history lesson, brother.
Here it is, man. Italy, oh, man, and you got me on here. I don't know exactly what it is.
Someone's going to grill you. I can't wait.
Mussolini united all them regions because they were all different states. So Italy wasn't really a proper country like as we know it until in the 1800s or the 1900s or some point. So they were different regions where, I mean... In the 70s, people were still riding donkeys and stuff, you know, in Italy. So it's just a different life, man. It's just different. You can live on $20,000 a year just fine. I rode my bike to work every day. You know, a cup of coffee is like €1. You know, you get a little sandwich for like €2. It's totally nice life, dude. Totally nice life.
Really?
Yeah, yeah. If you know, but for me, I'm still alive a little bit, but a totally good place to go if that's the kind of pace you like.
Retirement sounds like a good spot out there.
But like I said, if you want your electrician to come and fix your heater, it's like a week out, man. And he comes over and it's like, I could have done that in like 4 hours, man. It took you 2 days to get all the parts together and everything. It's just they're not driven in quite the same way that as we as Americans have become used to. You know.
What was the work you were doing over there? Because being an engineer, what were you working on over there? And we'll kind of get into that. I'm curious.
So I was working for the State Department on a contract that basically did data operations for the continent of Africa. So any system that went in and out of Africa needed to connect back into data structures in Italy, and then ultimately America. So anytime something went down in Africa, engineering-wise, I checked it out and did all the cybersecurity and the engineering related to that.
That's insane.
Yeah, it was a cool job. Cool job for sure.
All right, so let's rewind back to you being 18. I'm assuming this is kind of where it all started when you joined the Navy. Am I accurate on that?
Yeah.
What was your thought process coming out of high school going into the Navy? I wanted to go into the military. I got a couple of permanent Fs, so I can't. I got into a lot of trouble when I was a kid. And I tried. I wanted to go to Army's officer candidate training. And I had a buddy who was doing that. They said they wouldn't take me, so I was like, all right, well, shoot those dreams down. So I've always liked the idea of going into the military. What was your thought process behind it?
Well, I always thought I wanted to join the military because I saw this movie with Charlie Sheen called Navy SEALs.
Yeah.
It sounds real silly now when I think back on it, but I thought
Good
it was
movie.
the
I know
coolest
it.
deal. I was a kid, and you want to be a football player, you want to be whatever. I saw that movie. I'm like, I want to be a Navy SEAL. You're 10, 12 years old, and then you start doing that, and then when it comes 18, I went and did it. I got recruited to play college football at some decent schools and stuff, but I needed a little more structure than college was going to provide. I was a young, wild child, for sure. So I went ahead and joined the Navy right out of high school, and then to be a Navy SEAL. So off to boot camp I went.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, went to boot camp, tested real well on some tests, and they made me a cryptologist. So
What?
a cryptologist, cryptologist maintenance. So a person that works on machines that encode and decode information and sends them over wireless or sometimes wired links.
So some code breaking kind of stuff.
Yeah, I worked with code breakers, but I maintained their equipment or built their equipment and the antennas and the radios and all the stuff that went with that. So
That's
the
crazy.
technical side of cryptology. So we had linguists, we had people that did Morse code, we had people that operated the machines, and I was the one that made sure everything ran. Oh, we need an antenna here, and so I got assigned to an aircraft carrier waiting to go to SEAL training. So I was stationed on the Enterprise for...
The Enterprise, right on.
Yeah. So
Dude.
I got the Enterprise right out. I was in boot camp for September 11th.
Really?
Yeah. They locked down real hard in September 11th, not in boot camp.
Right.
Similar to Italian lockdown, but not, you're in boot camp. So lockdown, they say, you go through all this stuff, and then off to tech school I went, and then went straight to the fleet. And then waiting for my class for SEAL training. So it took me 2 attempts to get in because my first scores weren't quite high enough to get accepted in. But did a deployment on the Enterprise overseas. So, in the Middle East. So I was in the Middle East for that.
I'm sitting across from a Navy SEAL.
No.
No?
The story goes on, man.
I'm
not even in this story.
All right, keep going, brother. Keep going.
All right. So I cut my finger off, so that pushed me back a little bit. So I'm still missing the end of it right here.
Okay.
So I had to heal a little bit while I was on that deployment. I got it stuck in a machine. And then I eventually went to Navy SEAL training. I got in, and then during Hell Week, I tore my hip flexor pretty bad. So I got medically rolled, so I couldn't continue on. And then I was attached to a SEAL team in the time that I healed, so I had a year to heal and try to return to training. In that time, I got married and I had a daughter, and then I had another son on the way. I got accepted in SEAL training. I know, a year, right? I already had a daughter on the way.
A lot can happen in a year.
I already had a daughter on the way. I just didn't find out till the daughter being on the way until after I got hurt in Navy SEAL training. So went back to Virginia, got that girl, married her, brought her out to California, and then went back to SEAL training essentially a year and a half later, healthy, ready to go. But, your heart changes in that amount of time when you have a family.
Yeah.
And so once I had made it farther than I had made it before and had kind of proven myself, and they made it bad enough that it sucks that you're ready to quit, because it does suck.
Yeah.
You can watch it and you can't even feel what it feels like when you see the pictures. It's just like you haven't slept, you haven't ate, you're freezing, why are you here? You ask yourself all the time, this is terrible. So once I made it far enough that I felt like I had accomplished what I wanted to, I went ahead and what they call dropped on request, so DOR'd, and then returned back to the fleet.
Yeah.
So as a cryptologist. So then I started installing intelligence collection systems on ships and shore commands and flying around with a team of people and wiring everything up and climbing on the top of the towers of the ships and stuff. So
that's insane. So the change of heart going through Navy SEAL training based off of the children and stuff like that, what was the point you were trying to reach? Were you just trying to get past Hell Week?
I didn't know that I was trying to reach a point. I was half-hearted into it and was like, and I was so, I don't want to say skilled at that point, but I knew what to do and how to get through the training because I'd been through it before. And I was a leader that time, so I was a boat crew leader. And so I was leading a group of men through it. And I was good. And so I didn't want to leave them behind, because I knew all the tricks. I'd bury candy bars in the sand, or we'd take shortcuts, or we'd cheat, or like whatever. There's little,
There's little things you can do.
Give the instructors decaf coffee, whatever. You're doing all these little tricks to try to make it easier for yourself and your team. And so, I was enjoying it and I was going through it and I was a leader, but there was a certain point where you basically come home after doing that for a week, 2 weeks to your family, and what do? You sleep for 2 days straight. And what do? You get up and you go right back into training. It's just like you're trying to have a family. It's not for a family. No. That is not for a family. Like, at least for me, I mean, not against the guys that do it, but it's just my life changed. I didn't think I was going to have kids and have a family. And so once that changes, it changes your priority. Absolutely. And I had a totally decent job. I actually ended up enjoying being a cryptologist. I didn't think I was going to initially, but I enjoyed it, enjoyed working with my hands. And once you learn computers, they're okay to work on. At first, I was like, no way to computers. When you get into what I actually do now, it's funny. But
yeah, I mean, the other day when we were at the office, I saw you have your workflow up, and it's beyond my comprehension. It's so and I could learn it over time, having someone you sit down and explain how it works and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. But it takes a certain kind of way of thinking to be proficient at that. Yeah. And it's not something you can train it, but it's much better if you can naturally understand and figure it out.
I don't think you can train being an integrator, to be honest with you. I think it's something that is actually kind of inherent in people. Even being a nurse or something is kind of naturally inherent, that caring part, but the integrator is like the person that knows all the technologies and ties them together. You really got to have a certain knack for solving problems to be a really good integrator. And that's probably, of all the things I'm skilled at, is my biggest skill is solving problems. So once I learn the tools to solve the problems, I'm particularly good at solving problems. So the military forced me to learn those skills. So I just applied my problem solving skills to, instead of, killing people and stuff and the Navy SEALs do, I did it to building systems and spying or whatever.
Spying. That's so cool. There's an interesting trend going on. I had some guests yesterday, and Katie Boston, shout out to her. She was in the Air Force, and she was an intelligence officer embedded usually with Army units and stuff like that. She's been through all of Afghanistan. That's so cool. You don't get to hear those type of experiences. Being here in American, I've went north and I've went south. You're right. I've never gone to Europe. I've never gone to the Middle East or anything like that. Being in the military, you get to go see the crazy parts of the world that no one else does. We think that everyone lives the same way we do, and that's just not true. Yeah. It's just not true at all. And I love hearing these stories. I think they're so cool.
Yeah, I've seen some wild stuff, And my younger sister's actually a colonel in the Air Force too. So she's an intelligence officer that's a colonel, yeah. My younger sister is that. So
what do you have to do to become a colonel? Well, first off, what were you what did you retire? Did you retire, or how did it end for you?
Yeah, I retired from the Kansas Air National Guard as a cyber warfare operator.
All right.
So as the rank of E6, so staff sergeant. Tech sergeant. So I had a little bit of problems with making rank because I got a DUI a long time in my career. And it was a reservist type job. So I got out of the Navy as an E6 after 6 years, and 14 years later I retired as an E6 in the Kansas Air National Guard after a very distinguished career, actually. But,
wow.
It was my part-time job. So
that's true.
I was a full-time engineer.
So what's it take to get to a colonel? What does your sister have had to do to get to that?
She's a badass. That's what it takes. But you got to have me as an older brother.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
I just remember we grew up out in the country in Rose Hill, and it was just her and I. And I would kick footballs to her and run down there and just
Wham!
Yeah. She went to play college soccer and do very well. I think playing college sports is a great indicator for women how well they actually do in leadership roles and success in life, if you look at that.
Really? Can you elaborate on that? Because I've never heard that before.
Absolutely not. But,
okay.
It's just a statistic that I heard not too long ago that I'm repeating. So I don't know too much about the background of that, but I saw that it was something like 70% of female C staff played college sports.
Wow.
Or something like that. It was something that I was seeing around the women of playing college sports.
That's a good statistic.
But, we had a rough childhood, her and I growing up, and so we kind of had went through some stuff. We started in Oklahoma really poor. I mean, my mom was a exotic dancer, my dad was a biker. There was lots of drugs and partying and abandonment and all kinds of stuff. I mean, and they're great humans. It was just like we kind of went through this part of their life that they were going through, and then poor out in Rose Hill, So I think a lot of that kind of helped us with the ability to overcome, difficult things. 'Cause that's all life is your ability to handle problems. The better you handle them, the better in life you do, So.
Accepting that there was a problem and just releasing yourself from it, like, look, that sucked, same. My parents, drug addicts, fucking alcoholism, violence. Like, I understand.
I was in jail at 18 for 140 and a 40, and like I needed to go to the Navy, man. I'm telling you, I knew that going to college, play college football was not going to turn out the way that it's going to turn out for Amanda. I don't know if I should say her name here,
That's
but
fine.
for my sister,
Right.
like she was the one that kept the family kind of running and together. She's the oldest child.
Yeah.
I'm the oldest child, but she's the oldest child, And so I think that kind of helped her a lot. She crushes it, man.
Dude, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's an amazing story. 'Cause I love hearing that. And I think when you're an entrepreneur, I consider myself an entrepreneur. I'm assuming you do as well.
Mm-hmm.
You usually have a little bit of an skewed background to some degree. I don't know if you've noticed that, but I've noticed that like a lot of people I've talked to, parents were on drugs or alcohol. Like I was adopted or whatever it may be. There's always some sort of trauma. And from that trauma, I don't know what it is or why it is, but we all come out of it and go, you know what? I want to be my own boss for some reason. And I don't know where that stems from.
They just like trauma to continue to be poured on them as an entrepreneur.
And that is 100% correct, man. This is not trauma-free.
I don't like stability. I'm going to go out here and be an entrepreneur. So
that's 100% accurate. Yeah. It's hard.
I think you're just built to handle what comes at you a little better. So I get bored in the day-to-day. If I have a regular day-to-day job with a lot of things, I need something. I played rugby for years, got very good at rugby. I needed something to add some difficulty to my life, And once rugby ended, it was great to pour that energy right into, building a company.
Man. So when did you start your company? When did you decide that you were going to start your company and do your own thing?
Oh, honestly, probably like 2 years ago, but it goes back farther than that.
Hit me with it.
So before I went to Italy, I was an engineer for Raytheon here in town. And then, I was a very lead engineer for the mission out in Kansas. I was doing very well for myself. And then my best friend, Matt, was a industrial automation electrician for Young Electric. And we're playing rugby all season long, and our friend Paul owned a business and said, hey, can you guys build control panels? So basically boxes that run machines.
Right.
And Matt's like, yeah, I know how. And he's like, can you program PLCs? And I said, no, but I went and I took some classes at WATC. And I was like, yeah, I can program these. He would give us business on the off season, and we would go in my garage and drink beers, and we'd test. We'd test anybody that I've sold panels to. We'd test after that, but we'd build these panels and then make great money on the side. But he was a stay-at-home dad. His wife's a doctor, and I was working my engineering job, so it was just a side hustle.
Right.
I took a job in Italy, and he went back to work as a professor of robotics at WSU Tech.
Wow.
I came back from Italy. And, he's super smart. He's got a math degree. He's a brilliant guy. Great programmer. I have a degree in computer programming. He does not, and he's a better programmer than I am.
Damn.
Yeah. So we started that. We're doing great. I came back, and I'm like, I kind of came back short notice from Italy. I got divorced. I had 3 kids. It was difficult, and lockdowns and all that stuff. So I'm like, oh, we're going back, kids. So we go back, and I'm like, it's time for me to start a company. I like this. I want to do this. I want to. So what I wanted to do, because my last mission was based around, I have cyber background.
Right.
So I wanted to do industrial cybersecurity. So I walked around Wichita basically with a business that sells industrial cybersecurity. So I would go to look at manufacturers that needed industrial cybersecurity. Well, this town, so that was the initial business, George Kaufman Electric, and that's kind of what we did. And then nobody needed it; they just weren't modern enough. You got standalone machines. I'm not one to sell something that doesn't need to be sold.
Right.
And so as I talk to people, I'm like, why don't you guys modernize or use some of this stuff, this technology, this Industry 4.0 technology that's rolling out everywhere? Why don't you use this? We don't know how. That was their answer. We don't know how. And so I was like, okay. So I started looking for people that did this for them. These are my friends that own these businesses, or people that I've become friends with. So I'm trying to help them with their businesses, and nobody knows how around here. They know how on the coast, they know how in Texas, they know how in Germany, but they don't know how in the Midwest. So I'm like, why don't you let me take a crack at it? So one of my businesses that ran, one of my friends that ran a business, Blend Tech, they make spices and stuff, let me set up this machine on a line. I started counting what was coming out of there and catching some analytics and stuff, putting it in some databases. My test case, great, got a proof of concept, went and sold it to a company. They're like, great, they're willing to let me try it. I spent my own money and my own time initially to kind of getting, this off the ground. And then once I proved to them the value, then, the revenue comes in. And so I basically just started doing it. And I started doing it, and what somebody told me, when I first started was fail fast. So I just started failing, basically, And then as you fail, okay, that's not the way to do it. Okay, that's not the way to do it.
You always pick something out of that failure.
And then you overcome that. So then you start to build till now you have a product that people are asking you for. So because I've worked so tightly with the customer, I'm right there. What do you want? What do you want? What do you want? At the same time, studying and knowing, I know cyber. I'm certified in cyber, way up in cyber, right? I was a cyber warfare operator. I know all that stuff. And I spent 14 years as an engineer, so I understand. What I didn't completely understand was what was actually happening on the factory floor, because my cyber missions were basically looking from the internet at a factory. But when I got down on the factory floor and I got to see the machines, this is where I fell in love.
Okay.
This is where I fell in love.
All right.
I'm like, I love watching things get made. I love that process, and so I'll go in there and I love to walk the factory floors. I love to look at it, and so now finally what had happened was my job that the Navy had pushed me into around computers was lining up with things I did as a kid, where I tinkered and, lost my dad's tools and, did all that stuff, took apart my remote control car and it never worked again. Stuff kids do, you know? And finally I'm getting to do this, and people are like letting me do it and paying me and showing me and all this stuff. And I'm getting paid for it. So then that's when I found what I really love to do. I like to automate factories. I like to find efficiencies in the factories. I like to make people's lives easier, whether it's the people that's actually operating the machine or the people making the decisions, get them more information, make better decisions, that kind of stuff.
It feels good when you achieve something like, I made that better. I made this better. I helped this person to become more efficient and not have to do as much or whatever. It feels good. There's a feeling of achievement after you've completed this. I'm assuming, correct me if I'm wrong, that start to finish of automating a plant is not a fast process in any way, shape, or form.
No, it is not.
What's that process look like?
So the process looks like we have a conversation first, and then you tell me what you're thinking, right? And then we need a goal. So if people just come to me and say, oh, I want to modernize, great, I'll talk to you. I'll go in there, and maybe I can even give you a goal. But what I'd like to see is someone that comes to me and says, I want to modernize because I want my people on the factory floor to have a better experience, or I want my product to be better, or I want to be able to capture efficiencies here, or find this. So what's the goal of what we're trying to do? And then I'll go in there, and it takes about a month. I learn all about your processes. So I talk to people, look at what the machine, look at the technology you have, look at the culture.
Yes,
because the culture is important. Because sometimes I'll walk into, not to call out IT right here, but IT is where I find the no people. They're like, no. you know, and I used to be in IT. I used to be the one that says no, you know, so I understand where they're coming from. But if the culture is the CEO does not want to modernize, that is not a good, not a good candidate for me to spend my time and my effort to modernize you, you know. Even if people on the factory floor want to have these things or whatever, you know, the CEO is going to say no, or the operations officer or IT is in the position to shut down the project or something. I got to watch for these things because it takes a lot of effort to even get to a certain point. But so in that month, we learned that. And then if it's all good, we pick a little project, something that's easy. I call it low-hanging fruit, counting the parts out of this machine, inspecting that,
Right.
whatever, getting some basic stuff. And that way we can work together on something small. And then and that way we can show a little bit, and that kind of helps drive some value from that initial project and some excitement. And then we also learn quite a bit from that. I learn a lot about you. You learn a lot about me. We work together. Good. We like it. Now we kind of group that project up. So we do proof of concept or proof of value.
Okay.
So first, proof of concept, proof of value. So now I'll use Ericsel, my biggest customer, as an example. Is machine presses. We wanted to count. We needed operational equipment effectiveness coming out of these.
Okay.
So how efficient are the machines? So we needed to count the parts coming out of the machines. We need to know whether they're good or bad. We need to know the operator that's running the machines. We need to know the steel, where we bought that steel that goes into the machines. All that stuff matters.
So
it
many
all
variables.
matters. Even if it doesn't, if you don't think it matters, right? And so, but we go after that proof of value, and then so we can see it on a small scale.
Okay.
Once again, we're working together. And then once we just keep iterating on that, iterating, improving until we get to the point where we like this. Now start to scale.
Yes.
This is where I finally make a little bit of money.
Bit of money.
This is all this other stuff is basically my time and my energy, and even you're spending just a small amount of money from your company. I like to keep it this way, so we're not really all in here.
Not yet. We're building.
We're building. Like, I don't send an initial bid of 1.2 million, you know, which that's what it could cost over 4
Absolutely.
years, you know. But it's not, you know, it's like it's a smaller amount. And then, okay, now we're start to scale. We've got it right. We've made sure that we've built what we have is scalable. So I use all my system engineering, computer programming, project management skills to make sure everything is done right. And then we scale across your factory. Man. So then once we scale, then, I mean, there'll be additional problems of, like, you know, we need to expand databases. We need to reskill in certain areas, like the IT might need to upskill, or, you know, we might move skills or whatever. But I'm working with the people in your organization. What tools do they already know? You know, do you have a programmer on staff? If you have, like, maybe, you know, bringing them on or whatever. It's like, what resources do you have? Because the idea is that once you get modern, some integrators have this go deep and stay long mentality where they just embed in your manufacturing facility that you can't separate from them.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and I don't necessarily want that. There's lots of people that need this kind of work around here. So what I would prefer to do is train your staff, train your people, and get you to that point. Have proper configuration management. And I'm still there. I mean, probably I'm going to go to, like, some sort of software as a service or service as a service or something type model where, oh, you have this robot that's down. You don't have a robot person, but I got one on staff. I'll send him or her over, you know, or you want analytics. I run the analytics off site because you don't have a data scientist or a data analyst on site or cybersecurity people on site. So we run some of it in the cloud, built it all the right way. And then, you know, and then we work together over long term. You know, so that I basically become your consultant as you go through this. So the money that you're spending is not necessarily spending on consulting. You can actually go and spend it on the actual project and the modernization and drive some of that in-house. And you need to have the skills in-house. Otherwise, it's going to cost you too much.
It's an arm and a leg.
Yeah.
It's not going to be efficient.
It's going to be a failure. It's going to be a failure if you don't take on some of this in-house. And the crazy thing is the people that can do this in-house are like the cheapest people you can get. Go out and get yourself a college student.
Oh, yeah.
They know how to use tablets, man. They know, 65-year-old guy.
It's not your man. It's not your guy.
He's the guy clicking on the emails you shouldn't click on. Get rid of that guy.
Yes.
I mean,
find another place for that guy.
Find another place in retirement for him.
That's 100% true. Like, you look at like the younger generation coming up. Like, if you want that skill, start going to get them young right now, because the workforce is hard enough as it is. get them while they're still in college, make that relationship, give them paid internships or whatever, start building that relationship, nurture that talent, and get that bad boy in there. Because like you were saying, like if you're paying an outside company or a vendor or a consulting firm constantly to come out and still do the things that they implemented, like putting in the processes and making things more efficient, like it's gonna be an arm and a leg, like you said. It's just gonna cost them too much to make it not worthy. Like it doesn't make sense on a dollar standpoint. Yeah, that's damn. So there has to be a lot of relationship building during this process with you, plant manager, owner, CEO, IT, like a lot of people inside of that manufacturing, and you have to make this relationship over time and get them to tell you the information you need, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Like in IT, like so the company that I'm working with right now is IT. So I got to go and meet with their IT department. They're giving the people that need the signatures problems on certain parts. I think they just need some explanation of what's going on, But stepping in there, and so IT's first thing will shut it down for cyber, which is nice because I can lay out all my credentials and say, like, okay, what do you got, man? Like, you got your associate's degree, like that's cool, But let me tell you how this is being done. You don't want to hurt your company. IT is going from compliance and regulation, meaning making sure that we're secure, like that's just their job, making sure we're secure, making sure we're compliant, doing all those things. That's the IT thing. For one, you can, push that off onto Amazon Web Services or something like that. You can push some of that risk off somewhere else. But they need to go to enabling your organization, meaning you need to pull somebody into that department that can actually help build these tools, build these things, use these technologies to leverage your business growth. Versus them just being the people, they need to help enable your business growing. And so I think this is where a lot of people are missing this within their IT department, is the IT is squashing some of these projects.
Just because they're constantly saying no.
Or it adds tasks to them and stuff that they need to manage that they're already overworked. Their IT is overworked. So you need to upskill them. You need to give them more resources because we're going through a process. This is the fourth industrial revolution.
Right now?
It's right now. It's happening. So just think about when electricity was invented.
Oh, my God.
The equivalent to what's going on right now is the same thing as the second and the third. So the second industrial revolution is machines, assembly line, machines, electricity. And then the third is computers. So what we have right now is the fourth and the fifth. So imagine being dealt electricity and computers at the same time in an industrial revolution. What we're happening now is the fourth, which is all this stuff, and then the fifth, which is AI. In November 2023, is that the right year? Yeah, 2023. I consider the fifth industrial revolution has kicked off. The fourth would be the internet reaching manufacturing,
.com
right?
And stuff like that.
Yeah. So now the internet's reaching manufacturing. Manufacturing doesn't know what to do. They're scared cyber. They're going to get hacked. They've heard all the things, the ransomware. That's okay. We got it covered. We can talk about it. I'm not saying zero risk. I'm not saying any of this. I'm just saying what's worth the risk. You're going to lose your company if you don't do anything. Okay?
Someone's going to beat you.
That's a big risk right there. Someone's going to beat you because they're going to leverage all this stuff.
Yes.
And if I could go on and on about the tools that what Industry 4.0 unlocks, but now we have the fifth, and fourth enables the fifth. So fourth is the industrial Internet of Things, pulling all that data out into cloud. Now you have it in the cloud. Now you grab the AI and you grab that data from the cloud and you can make little decisions up there, send it back down to the factory. But we need to have this happen. You can run models locally, but building the server stacks and all this stuff is totally possible, and some people choose that and need to if you're in nuclear or petrochemical, life sciences, pharmaceuticals. Would need to run on-prem, have their data, processes that you can't allow any disconnection from. So if you need the electric grid, probably should not be on the internet.
Yes.
I was on some missions there. I would not plug that into the internet.
Really?
That's the critical infrastructure is important, and that stuff was not built for the internet. It was built in the 80s. Built in the 70s. The internet didn't exist, so it's not ready. There's no password security. There's no encryption. There's no bit checking. There's none of that. you know, in a lot of these older systems. So it's just important that it's imperative that you keep them offline. But you can overlay systems on them in certain ways and do it in certain ways still.
Upgrades, improvements on certain things.
And do it in right ways, firewalls and stuff, you know. And if it's just data you're talking about, that's one thing. But if you're talking about you can actually grab a robot arm and swing it around wildly in a manufacturing facility, we're going to protect that in a completely different way than a clock on the wall that displays time or something.
Yeah, absolutely.
So just identifying, and this is what is important about being on the ground, is going in there and seeing, okay, we can take a little risk here, you know, appropriate risk. I'm not, you know, I always say, what's your appetite for risk? You know, so if your appetite is 0, you know, then you need to unplug that and put it in a safe and bury it in the ground.
Yes.
You know, everybody's taking a little bit of risk by just operating. Now, you're going to take more risk connecting to the cloud. That's inherent. But I believe that the benefits you get and the mitigations to those risks are plentiful now.
Yes.
And the benefits you get are plentiful, that you need to be taking those steps, or is my belief that you're going to lose your manufacturing company by either acquisition or going out of business. Because right now I'm starting to do scheduling with AI, meaning you, like a food manufacturer that I work for, if you need to make, so basically they have these giant blenders and they need to be cleaned out between certain batches of food. Let's say allergen, non-allergen.
Right.
So you would never run an allergen before a non-allergen or whatever if it's flipped. But, okay, so now they have a very skilled person at that organization that says, okay, I'm making pancake mix, then gravy mix, then Jim's fish batter, then, like, and all these things work because you don't need to clean out between them. Right, this one's got, but then all of a sudden you run something with cumin in it. Okay, now clean out, right? So you put that at the very end, you know, and then maybe cumin, or whatever it is, you know. Well, this is a skilled person that does all this. Now we've taken all of their stuff from basically a year and a half, put it in the AI and say, I need to make all these things by next Thursday. Make me a thing, and it gives you the thing. They're going to crush their competition. They're going to crush them.
Because they don't have to do that downtime
And
to
no
stop
downtime.
and clean out those big blenders. They're able to just boom, 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 boom.
They're operating 5 hours a week extra on those blenders right now by just simply giving me the data, normalizing it, contextualizing it, putting it in the cloud, crunching it up, and pushing them back to schedule.
And this is the order of operations in which you need to cook all of these meals to have them done by X. And, you know, dude.
I need 40,000 widgets coming out of this line by next Thursday. Great. Run Bob, overtime, machine 6.
Damn, that's that simple?
Yeah. I mean, if you put in rates of labor rates for the people too, standard rates for the machines, you know, parts, what they run, some parts, you know, run faster on some machines than other machines. It's all there. But the first step is you got to get that data. These guys don't even have the data. They have it on paper. They're doing paper. They're still doing paper. So first we got to get them digitized. So that's kind of the first step is educating them, but then getting them digital so that I have some digital stuff to work. So I'm not flipping through these guys' notes. I can't, is that a 7 or a 1, man? I don't know, you know, like, and so once you get it digital, which then I try to get it even farther away from humans, because even when humans are their most accurate, are only like 45% accurate. Right, when they're counting these things.
Right.
You know? And so we try to get it to where now what I'm doing is pointing a camera at it. That made a part, that made a part, that made a bad part, that made a part, that made a part, that made a part, you know. And so now we're saying, okay, that made a bad part. Why? You can look at, the type of steel we're using. Oh, I didn't think this would matter, but the type of steel from where it comes from matters from producer to producer. So now the steel comes in, it's like, okay, when we buy it from this steel company, we actually get a lower rate, but it's 25% less. Great, let's run. That's still a human decision being made.
Yes.
You know, but what you're doing is you're giving the human much more information. So those humans that make your best decisions are the most valuable in your organization now. Those are the ones you hold on to because what you're doing is basically giving them more decisions and better information. So that's what we're going after.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I love that. This is so nerdy. I fuck with this so much, man.
It's my life,
love
man.
this stuff.
And this is why people don't talk to me in bars.
That's fine. I could sit here and do this for hours. I like this stuff, you know, because I have a background of 5.5 years, 5 years. We'll go 5 years of CNC 3, 4, and 5 axis lathe machining. I was getting pretty good with G code and learning G code and being able to edit right there on the spot. Started getting really good with CATIA V6 using that. I really like Inventor. Inventor's like the go-to when I like.
I'm unaware.
No?
Yeah.
Inventors, it's part of Autodesk.
Okay.
In them, Inventor's a great 3D building space, dude.
Yeah.
It's amazing. And I really liked the technical things of that. I just never really wanted to do it as a job.
Yeah.
It was never really a job. Like, I got paid well to be a machinist, but it's sometimes 10, 12-hour days, early in the morning, 4 a.m. sometime. And it's tedious. It can be tedious, part after part, same thing, over and over and over again. I wasn't given too many problems to solve, and I think that was the thing that what got me into part design, because you have to now take this thing, what's its form, fit, function, what does it need to do, how is it going to, like, how can you fix whatever cutting issues from the machine. I thought that was cool, and I was starting to get into before I dropped out of WATC, which is now Wichita State Tech.
Yep.
And I liked wireframe. Wireframe was pretty cool,
Yeah.
and I thought the idea of using wireframe to help build ship hulls, I thought that would be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I've always wanted to work in like a shipyard. I think that's a cool like atmosphere.
It's not.
It's not?
No.
No.
Well, my enterprise was dry docked for the first year I was there.
Really?
It was terrible. I was in Portsmouth, Virginia. There was people being stabbed on base and stuff.
What the?
It's just a rough lifestyle living on a shipyard in Portsmouth, Virginia. And then you're just needle gunning all day on ship metal, cleaning asbestos off stuff.
Maybe I'm happy I never got that far.
Yeah. Shipbuilding, man, is it's hot. It's hard. The ship's hard to move around.
It's big.
Yeah, it's huge.
Look at the newest aircraft carrier. Can't remember the name of it. The big one that just got built and sent over to the Middle East just recently.
Great. I don't know.
What is the new one? The Gerald Ford? The Gerald R. Ford, I think. And it's like it got rid of the old school catapult where now it's the magnetic catapults and stuff. That is, how do you start to build something like that? You know what I mean?
It's a thought in somebody's head, man.
You look at this giant ship and you go, humans built this. This is really cool. Like, I don't know. I think people take building things for granted. Very much so. They just, it's there. Cool. Someone gave it to me, or I bought it, or whatever. They give zero thought into like the actual labor and skill of where did it come from? How was it put together? And I don't know. I just find that shit fascinating.
You know, the Enterprise had 8 nuclear reactors on board, 8 small ones. This is the first ship of its class. And
the Nimitz, correct? Nimitz class?
It's Enterprise class.
Enterprise class,
Yeah.
okay.
Then they switched to 2 reactors on every other ship afterwards. That ship is fast.
The
Enterprise is fast.
It can move, huh?
One reactor went bad in like the 90s or something. They just filled it with concrete, and they didn't need it anymore. It's like powered the city of Charleston, like after hurricanes and stuff, like shore power, like you reverse power and you can power the city. I mean, it's a beast.
From
man.
the aircraft carrier?
Yeah, from the aircraft carrier. It's got berthing for, 5,000 people live on it.
Right.
So, and probably it could handle more. It could handle, it's just massive, man.
It's
just
a city.
massive.
It's a floating, moving city airport.
It took me like 7 minutes to commute to work on the ship. I literally had a 1,000 foot and 3 deck commute.
Oh, my God.
Yeah. My office was all the way at Frame K, which is over the overhang of the ship, right below the cats. So the cats would hit the water brakes and be like, boom. I'd have to buy new monitors or get new monitors and stuff all the time for my office.
No.
Yeah, I had big headphones on all the time. It was hot and everything because I was young. It's called seaman in the Navy. So I was a young cryptologist in there. I had my own office, but it wasn't climate controlled or anything. It was like the worst office that they could find.
It's a grunt office. Get in there, do the things you're supposed to do.
Do the maintenance in there.
Do you miss that life?
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. Why?
Simple. I miss, my days now are not simple anymore. Sometimes it's nice to just like have a job and do a job.
Hey, I need this done. All right.
Like you're on the aircraft carrier, you're just kind of hanging out with your friends. It's 12 hours on, 12 hours off. So, you just go to work and You work. I mean, you're always working. I mean, it wasn't like there was 12 hours off because if something broke, they called me. I was the only guy to fix it. So. But if nothing was broken, you're at the 12 hours on the day. You're just kind of doing maintenance or whatever.
Yeah.
Pull ups, like go down to the gym, go to the. So you're just kind of. This isn't everybody's experience.
Right. This is
there are
just
guys,
your experience,
just
brother.
mine. The 12 on 12 off guys that are working on the flight line and stuff. I would not do that.
The flight line, you wouldn't work up on top?
Not in the Middle East on a flight deck. It's probably 135 degrees up there.
Ooh.
Probably more coming right off of the heat, and then you're up there for like 12 hours a day during flight ops and stuff. Those guys were not enjoying their. Those were the guys that wouldn't come back from port calls and stuff. They're like, I'm done with the Navy.
So
the Navy's not liking me with their recruiting right now. I'm sure.
You said you'd go back. You said you'd go back. That's good enough.
Choose your rate, choose your fate. That's what they say. Pick your job. Choose your rate.
Huh.
Choose your job. Choose your fate. So
interesting.
Yeah.
I think that's very. Do you remember what an aircraft carrier can do? Launch, an aircraft every 5 minutes, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, somewhere in there. What was like the biggest air operation that you got to see?
When we were coming back when we came back from overseas, we picked up our families in Norfolk, Virginia, or in Mayport, Florida, and we drove them back to Norfolk, Virginia. So it's called the Tiger Cruise. So the families come on board the ship and kind of hang out.
Yeah.
And they stay. I didn't have a family there or whatever, so I was working. I actually cut my finger off with all the families on board.
That's when that happened?
Yeah.
No.
I had to walk through the ship with the bloody. It looked like a stump because I had my white T-shirt wrapped around it. Was all bloody, and I had no shirt on.
Someone think that you just took off your whole hand.
Oh, he lost his whole hand. There's a video on YouTube of me burying it at sea. We can put a link. Is that how they do? Put a link here.
Yeah, we'll figure it out.
I wouldn't want to share that anyways. But we did a air show. So we took all of our aircraft and launched them, and we did an air show with our own aircraft, a private air show for the families and stuff.
That's
with our
cool.
So we had helicopters, we had planes flying around breaking the sound barrier. We had, and then like at night they loaded up all the 50 cals because alongside the ship there's 50 cals and
gun mounts and points
gun
and
mounts
everything.
and then you load them up with tracer rounds, and then you just shoot them and look like little laser beams and everywhere. And I mean, it's a cool experience. I'm like, this is not how the Navy is, everybody, but
This is cool for you to watch.
Cool. It's cool. So you go up there and you watch, and there's an air show and everything. It's a private air show. It's cool.
Man.
So that was the biggest one. I mean, we were at war, so the war had started. So I mean, the aircraft would leave with bombs and come back with no bombs. But I was not a part of that. I was a cryptologist. I was, collecting signals that were bouncing across the water and direction finding where they were coming from and that kind of stuff, to figure out where the transmissions were and that kind of thing.
So I don't know a whole lot about that, right? So when you're looking for transmissions, are you looking for enemy transmissions? Are you looking for your own transmissions? What do you like? Is there certain things that you're looking for, and how do I want to word this? How are you able to determine what the thing is that you find?
So each let's use the Enterprise as an example.
Absolutely.
So the Enterprise, if I was looking at it from another ship, would have certain radars that it was using, specific to the Enterprise class aircraft carrier. So now when these radars are operating, you can say, okay, they've got these 3 radars. This is probably an aircraft carrier. But you can do a lot of things to hide that. Turn the radars off, emit different signals to hide it. So now when you're looking at a Russian boat or some other boat, or some boat, it's a boat, you got a radar hit, but you don't know what it is. So you now can use your boat, shoot a line of bearing on it and say, okay, it's 80 degrees off my bow. So you shoot this long line, and then you use another asset that shoots another cross line, and where they cross, that asset is. There's a certain level of inaccuracy there. And the more you get, the more accurate it becomes.
Right.
But then that's how you essentially do a direction find, a DF on that location. And then you know what the asset is by what it's transmitting.
Wow.
The radars and stuff. So it's got its own signature. So that's essentially how it works.
Okay. Now, how do you jam a radar? I've never understood how that worked, because you talk about what is it, like the F-15 Growler is a really important electronic warfare. It jams ground radar and things of that nature. How does that work?
Just high amounts of electrical energy that match the spectrum or the frequency that's transmitting at.
So you're overloading it with its own transmission.
Its own stuff. Or
it's really that
whatever.
Simple?
No.
I won't call it simple.
No, I mean,
won't call it simple.
Not necessarily my area of expertise.
Okay, fair.
Jamming radars, it would be more of collecting that, and then later on, when I was an engineer for Raytheon, I was on high altitude unmanned aircraft. So I essentially did the same thing, but the aircraft now can do its own. It doesn't need a second asset because it flies so quickly. So it can shoot the line and then shoot the line.
Man.
So it's high altitude manned or unmanned because it's U-2 and Global Hawk. And then I was operating here, and they were operating somewhere overseas. So they're basically someone on the ground picks up a radio and says, whatever they say, bad things to America or whatever.
Whatever.
And then we say, okay, the person's right here within this certain level of things, and you can fly another asset over, take a picture of them, or
figure out. Let Uncle Sam do its thing and figure out where they are and who they are, because we're pretty good at that.
Just pass the information on. That's
man, that's that sounds fun, but it obviously you're like, it's rough life. It is a hard life, but it does sound like there's a bit of degree of like awesomeness to it.
Yeah, I mean, fighting a war is a young man's game. So as you get older, you look back at some of the stuff you did or some of the stuff that happens in the world, and it is what it is. But like as a young man, what I want to do, I want to go out there and essentially be a war fighter. I have no desire to do that anymore. I don't want to go to war. I don't want to send my sons to war or my daughter to war. I don't want that. But something about being a young man that was intriguing. Yeah. But it is a different lifestyle. It is a different lifestyle. Being in the military, they've got wars all over the world right now.
Yeah, I mean, I
can't help but watch it all on YouTube and stuff, but it still intrigues me.
Ever since Russia decided to make its move on Ukraine is when I kind of got involved into like geopolitics. I didn't really know much before then. Like I knew of the war in Iraq and what we were doing over there for the last 20 years. I remember distinctly 9/11. I'm 34, just turned 34. So like I remember 9/11, and then I remember 9/12, the day after. Everyone was a patriot that day. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So I do recall all of that. And it's just, I don't know, you think of war and you think of, trench warfare, what you see right now, in Iraq, but or not Iraq, but Ukraine. But you look at us, we don't play that game. Like, I feel like we're so far advanced than anyone else. Like, it's not even a competition almost.
Well, we outspend everybody by quite a bit, so
that's
that
true.
helps.
We do have a lot of money,
so
that's kind of nice.
Yeah.
Sometimes, like I said earlier, money solves problems, baby. It really does.
Yeah. I mean, in SEAL training, actually, one of the SEALs told me this one day, and it was one man's terrorist is another man's freedom fighter.
That's very true.
And that really stuck with me for a long time, because if I was, for example, in Afghanistan, your country is being occupied by a foreign actor.
Absolutely.
And so, you're going to, if it was flipped, I'm that guy.
We're running house out here.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I'm be the best insurgent ever for about a week,
I think, I'm curious on what America learned from that experience of 20 years of insurgency, because it wasn't a conventional war.
I think you got to win the hearts and the minds of the people. I don't think it's going to war with them. I think it is winning them over, I think that's what they either should have learned or have learned from that. I mean, so a lot of problem what happens over time is, like, if you look at even the first guerrilla warfare, when the English used to line up in lines in their red coats,
right,
and we would hide in the woods with Indians and snipe them.
Yeah.
That was terrorism. They saw that as terrorism because we weren't acting with the traditional rules of war.
That makes a lot of sense.
And then you look, you can use German U-boats as a great example too. Terrorism, you can't see who's attacking you. It's under the water, so that we've normalized that of guerrilla warfare. We've normalized submarines. We've normalized, the problem is chemical warfare. We didn't normalize so much, but same idea. Someone's using it. Nuclear, we don't want to normalize this. Cyber, we don't want to normalize it. That's the problem as it comes when you start to normalize these things in war. And by no means am I a military historian, strategist, or anything,
Put that out there. That's fine. Yeah.
My views do not represent that of the United States government.
No, just our own opinions. Yeah. It's fascinating. I do find that America. I don't know why I'm really stuck on this, like you being in the military thing right now, but I find that very fascinating after World War I that America had the pick of its litter. We could have done whatever we wanted. We didn't. Same thing after World War II. We invested and built other countries. We could have gone in and said,
Germany's a huge ally now,
right?
know?
Exactly.
And Italy's a huge ally now. So
winning the hearts and minds of those people. You come back to that thing, and that's 100%.
That's the long-term benefit that you get that you should do. Like and and I ended up a cyber warfare operators assigned to a cyber protection team. So I ended up essentially just defending United States assets from cyber attack. Particularly around, I had an interest in critical infrastructure, so our power grid and stuff, So that's where I ended up, just defending, and that's part where I ended up in my military career, cool. And I had a choice of where I wanted to end up. I could have some options there along the line, but cyber warfare was really interesting, and then the cyber protection team was neat. You got to fly out and, hey, protect this aircraft from being hacked. Okay, what would I do?
Yeah,
you got to pretend like you're a hacker. Ooh, I'd sneak out here. I'd put a thumb drive in here, or how do you defend against that? You badge readers and remove the thumb drive, the USB port, or just that kind of stuff. You get to think like a bad guy and do all the bad guy stuff, but it's just to defend against the bad guys. So that I kind of liked,
dude. So we're at an hour and 10 minutes.
Okay.
And we've barely even talked about what you're doing with the consulting. Like obviously we've talked about the processes and stuff. You've mentioned these little sensors that you're trying to work on. Mm-hmm. What are they? What are these little sensors that you're trying to develop for? Because I know that this is the project that you're playing with right now, right?
Yeah. So my favorite project, which is the salt mine, the Hutchinson salt mine, they store film down there, and the film degrades over time. So old movie film.
Huh.
From like the 20s and the 30s, and it degrades, and when it degrades, it releases this gas. And that gas will let you know is how much it's releasing is how quickly it's degrading. And it's also what I call contagious. I don't know if that's a good term, but if you have several in the same area and one starts to go bad, that gas will cause the others to go bad. The current solution to that problem is having these pieces of paper that turn colors. And then you walk through there, but there's lots of movies, so every couple of years they check. And you're talking Star Wars is down there. I saw Grandma's Boy the other day down there. I'm like, we got to save this, you guys. This is like one of my favorite movies.
Yeah, it's a good movie.
Yeah, so you see all these movies down there. And so basically you keep them down there because it's at a constant 60 degrees, temperature, 40% humidity. And so
good conditions.
It's good conditions down below the ground. So they keep them down there. And what we want to do is start to detect that film going bad and then maybe move it to a conditioned space or away from some of the other films or start to address that. Because these will go bad over about 100 years, even in ultimate best conditions.
There is an end point for them eventually.
Unless we figure something else out. But in the meantime, let's try to extend those because these are unreleased Star Wars trailers, or shorts, what they call them, stuff that hasn't been seen. So there's a lot of value in this, even intrinsic value in just like having the actual thing as a collector. Yeah. But even remastering, like sometimes just not too long ago, they went and found an old documentary from, I actually probably can't say this, but they found an old documentary from a band they didn't know exists, so they're redoing it, and they're making this whole documentary. The family found it after the band was basically all gone.
Wow.
And so now the family's going back, and they're finding this stuff, and they're able to actually do this. So, they want to, for their customers, they want to extend the life of these things. So, so what we want to do is we want to create sensors that detect this. Now, sensors exist that detect acetate acid, but they don't exist necessarily in the right ways to pull them into networks for that particular environment. Because you're in a salt mine, obviously there's no wireless down there, or so we gotta use a different technology called LoRaWAN, so long range wide area network. So it's got good penetration because these things are kept in metal tins, and the rooms are the size of football fields. And then there's a 10-foot wall of rock between the next football field room. So to cover that sort of space, you would need like probably 10 Wi-Fi routers.
Right.
That's not the right technology. That would be unmanageable. So there's a different technology called LoRaWAN that's typically used in oil and gas and ag. It's got long-range Wi-Fi capabilities, 8 miles if you get it 40 feet in the air, line of sight.
Holy crap.
Nothing blocking. He's got can penetrate trees. This is the primary technology you would use to build like a smart city.
Really?
Or smart, even smart factories. There's it's emerging technology a little bit. It's pretty developed, but so we're taking that network and then we're taking it down below ground, and then we're going to build our sensor network out of that, so the sensors can connect into there, so we can have one basically router. It's called a gateway, and then that can connect to all the sensors in that room. So now we have a much smaller network to manage down there, because there's like 45 of these rooms, and they're filling them up all the time with stuff. Where did we put that? Where is this? What's going on there? They need a little bit different solution that's typically normal for, most situations like that. So
now these sensors are going to detect the gas, let it know the levels of gas, and then be able to then communicate it from these huge football field, underground stone encased, like almost, it sounds like a bunker.
Oh, it looks like a bunker.
Yeah?
Yeah. It's cool.
And it's
cool.
all for film.
Yeah. There's other stuff stored down there. I mean, there's old movie stuff like clothing or whatever. That's called costumes and props. All kinds.
How did you get involved in this? How did you find this?
Oh, man. I was at a WEBA, Wichita Independent Business Association.
At WEBA?
Yep. Free shout out for them right there.
I love WEBA.
Yeah, me too, man. It's cool. I was at breakfast. I sat across from this. I found a piece of paper laying on the thing that said LoRaWAN acetate sensors. And I was like, LoRaWAN? Who in town is doing LoRaWAN? Because I built a LoRaWAN network when I was the project manager for the Smart Factory at WSU Tech. I built a little prototype LoRaWAN network because it's got massive uses in manufacturing. And so I was building it out. And I was like, this is crazy. I didn't expect somebody else in town to do this. Talked to the guy. He's like, yeah, I tried it, but I don't understand the servers and the back end so much. But he understood the technology.
Yeah.
And I'm like, dude, I build servers. I build all this stuff. I know the infrastructure. I do architecture for smart
This is
factories.
right in my wheelhouse, baby.
You're missing me.
Yes.
You're missing me. Let's do this, man. So Paul Farmer's his name. He owns FamHost. And so we started talking, and his wife wants him to retire, and I'm far from retiring. So we're doing this thing. We're basically handing over the business over the next year to me. So I've acquired FamHost, and we office out of the Farm Credit Bureau building over here. Got a server room in there and everything. And so he's teaching me business and all this stuff. I'm an engineer.
Yeah.
So I've got to learn a little bit about business and that stuff. And so he's kind of mentoring me. And then and we're just going at the business, doing great, so he's helping me with that project. And I got plenty more like little projects going on and stuff like that. But on that one, so that's how that came across.
I would love to come see that.
Yeah, and it's right across from Underground Vaults and Storage, which is the salt mine company. I can take you over and meet that guy, and you can look at all. He's got a crazy rock collection, man. This guy's like a geologist. He's a vice president of technology, but his hobby is geology. He's got a really nice rock collection. So if you're into that, it's in his office.
No, I think
right
that's
across.
so cool.
Yeah, but I'll show you around.
So the power of networking is how you found this like passion project, and I wouldn't call it a passion project, but there's passion to it. But the power of you just going to a networking event, serendipitously looking down, seeing this flyer that had this information on it, like, oh, whoa, who's doing these type of networks? And then you guys just hit it off, and that was it.
Yeah, of something I've learned from business, I believe I'm self-proclaimed very good engineer, but that's by my own judgment. But I think a lot of people would agree with that. And so when I first started with business, I thought, straightforward, just have a great product, be a great engineer, and say, hey, I'm open for business, guys. I'm an engineer. And all of a sudden, I would be, wait, everybody's got to wait. There's only one of me, but it doesn't work like that.
Nope.
And so then I joined WEBA. And that was my first one, in the Wichita Manufacturing Association. And that's where all my customers come from, because this isn't a thing where I just blast social media and be like, hey, make your factory smart. No, this is, like you said, it's a long process of getting to know somebody. So, it's a network. And when people are going to spend potentially millions of dollars with you, or if I fail, your company has the huge possibility of failing. So it's a lot on me as well.
Yeah, I didn't think about that.
Yeah, and so or you could lose your job because you've made a bad decision by hiring me. Yes. And so I make sure this is not the case by the way that I do this right. I don't sell stuff that doesn't work. I'm tech agnostic, meaning if I sell a solution that you don't need, you're not going to hear about it.
Right.
You're going to hear about the solution you need.
Exactly.
And I'm going to tell you where to go get it. That's truly how I am. I'll give you the right recommendations for the problem.
What's best for their solution.
Yeah, best for their solution.
Yes.
So that's what I'm not a software as a service guy. I'm an engineering firm. So I want to help you get from Industry 3.0 to Industry 4.0. That's what I'm here for. Whether the technology that I can do in-house or whether it's a technology, like I don't do robots in-house. We got to go somewhere and get a robot guy based on what the robot is.
Right.
It's a welder. Is it a welder? How reliable do you need it? How accurate do you need it? What kind of welding is it? And then we can kind of point the right directions and bring those people in there. I help you make those right decisions because it's so much for a small manufacturer here to know that. Like, should I use Amazon Web Services?
Right.
Should I run on-prem? Should I run off-prem, like for my solutions? Should I use vision systems here? Should I use sensors here? And things are changing so fast. I want to be your ally in that.
Yeah.
And not just be someone that's like, oh, I'm going to sell you. I'm going to sell you. I'm going to sell you.
Let me give you my highest ticketed price.
Yeah.
No, that's not what this is about.
I even feel uncomfortable sometimes when I even have to name prices. The money part is the part I don't like about doing business.
Yeah, asking for large sums of money
Yeah.
does make you feel uncomfortable at first. But then once you understand that, like, what it's going to give them and what the return is on that investment, like, because they're investing into you, they're investing into your product, the relationship that they built with you, there's trust in that, and they know it is an investment.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is weird to go, hey, man, it's $25,000 per month or whatever. And it's just like, if you've never held that money yet, that's a lot of money until you've held that money. And then it's like, oh, it's just 10 grand or it's 25 grand. Because once you start getting into the millions, 10 millions, 15 millions, that is nothing. People just, for whatever reason, will dish it out. So I can relate with that. Like, it's weird asking people for large sums of money. Mm-hmm. It gives you the
it does. I mean,
heebie-creebies.
it does. It's like, especially like I worked for the government before. If I wanted something, I just said, I want this, and this is what it costs. They're like, okay, here, like they spend money pretty freely, but these guys got to be a little more tight with their money.
More strategic.
And so that is a part of business that's a little bit different when you come from just getting a paycheck and working for the government, and money isn't even discussed. It's like they need a solution, and you go there and you just tell them the solution. The money people are in the background, like writing all the zeros and stuff,
Yeah.
And then now where it's like, oh, I got to determine what this is actually cost or what this is worth, or, and you lose money on stuff because you don't bid enough, or something like that. So learning all that little intricacies about having a business was where I had to come through over time,
Learning curve.
Yeah, learning curve. So, but 2 years in, I mean, I'm starting to iron it out, and I like to drive value for my customers. So I like to not get money until they feel like they're getting value. So that's pretty important to me in my business model. So I try to get it done for a reasonable amount until it's, all the way through a reasonable amount. But like, I try to keep the costs small so the costs aren't what keep us from moving forward.
Right.
We don't want to know based on money, because I would rather get you a solution and then let's talk about what this costs to scale so you can actually look at it. And if we get to that point, let's say after our proof of concept, I'm like, look, this isn't the right solution. You guys need a different style of database because of the amount of data you're getting, and I don't provide this or whatever. I'll let you know. That's free to you. I'm going to give you that feedback. You'll get a report. And you can call me or whatever, and we can. And I mean, I informally go and talk to people all the time. Hey, man, come look at my plant. And I'll walk through there and look at them and give them ideas, and then I'll go back the next time, and they did what I told them to do, but I didn't do that. I'm like, hey, man, all you need to do is just screencast this. This is easier to do. Like, this is what I'm saying. Go out and get that college student. Yeah. He knows how to do screencasting. Like, you don't want to pay me to do this, man. I'll say stuff like that to people, and I want them, I want them to solve their own problems if they can, I'd love to just be a consultant and just tell you, and help you. I make a little wiki. I give you a wiki, I give customers access to a wiki when I build their stuff. I'm writing notes the whole time. I make this little wiki for them. So, I mean,
Very organized in it then.
I have a team that helps me stay organized. I should give them a shout out, but I try to give them organized results. Yeah.
dude.
So the documentation is the hard part, because if you get real good documentation, it costs real good money, you know. But if you get decent documentation, I can get you that pretty cheap, you know. It depends on what sort of documentation you want. Do you want real technical level documentation, technical wording, and all that stuff, and you know, SOPs that are step by step and step by step? We can do that if that's in your price point. If it's not, I'll give you my notes, my build notes, with the thought that you're going to be reading this later, you know.
Man.
Yeah. So you can get it to you for free or cheap, depending on, you know, what you're asking for. So
Dude,
links to Amazon. If I bought something on Amazon, you click on it, you can go order that part and replace it or
so
whatever.
you give them all the resources that you can possibly give them, literally like everything underneath the sun. And just to make sure that they are set up for the best possibility for success with the industry.
Trying to absolutely avoid a failure. Digital transformation failures will cost them their business.
Ugh.
You know, because now you got money in it. Now you got everybody scared to move again. Like, I'm recovering a failed digital transformation now at a factory. And if somebody came in before me, and there's 3 reasons it fails. You don't have the right technology, you don't have the right people, or you don't have the right culture. Right. So you walked in, I believe they selected the wrong technology. So they used
XYZ over ABC.
Yeah. And they should have used it in a slightly different way. And I think they lacked a little bit of skill in some areas, because they actually probably could have made that technology work if they brought on an expert in that technology. But an expert in that technology is going to be quite expensive and quite old at this point. So why not move to something like Python based that is very, you know, modern, you know.
Modern's a good
word. Yeah. So that you can go out and get somebody that's a little lower price, instead of going with something like COBOL or something that's like really old school language. Nobody does that anymore, but like, I'm just trying to give an example that won't put anybody off right here, except for power grid and maybe air traffic controllers. But it still runs on that.
It's building. Engineering is how we progress in society. You build buildings, transportation, grid, power, like that's all engineering. That's all just someone figuring something out, fucking up a few times, and then finally getting it right.
If you look back over time, like 10,000 years ago, every single one of us were out there trying to get food every single day.
That's right.
100% effort, everybody. Then you go, let's say 1,000 years ago, 1 and 2.
Yeah.
1 and 2. There was other jobs to do, you know. There was religion, there was art, you know. 100 years ago, 1 in 10.
Yeah.
You know. Today, 1 in 250. And a lot of people will be like, oh, you're putting, you know, are there 245 farmers out here out of work? No, we got doctors, we got artists, you know, we got people that own restaurants.
Yep.
We got people that are retired, you know, so it enables people to be out of manufacturing. These people that don't want to be in manufacturing will free them up to go be what they want to be. You know, the computer allowed that, automation allowed that, electricity allowed that, tractors allowed that. Tractors put a lot of horses out of work.
Yes, it
you
did.
know, but, you know, we adjust, right? And so that's what we're trying to do. And people say, you know, the manufacturing, you know, we're not, if you add a robot, you actually add 2 people on average to your production facility.
Because you need someone who knows the robot and how to operate
It just becomes more efficient. It's just faster. So now it's doing something faster. So now you need, like, examples. I need another forklift driver at one of my operations because it's stacking stuff so fast. You need to buy a forklift and a forklift driver. And they were like, okay, you know. So, and it didn't alleviate a job. It actually, they needed more jobs. But now they're like, they added like 18 percentage points to the efficiency in that particular cell.
Because of increase of production, just faster. So now you need someone to unload it faster.
And that's what we're needing, just like that's what we need. More with less, more with less, more with less. Same thing over time, more with less. Every time. It's always been more with less. Every iteration is more with less, you know?
Yeah.
Everybody think, even automakers, you know, automakers used to use massive amount of people to make an automobile. You know, Tesla's way down on that list. So, and they were invented basically after the 4th Industrial Revolution. That's why they're killing it. You know, they know they're a data company.
Yeah.
They did it from the beginning. They did industrial data ops out of day one. So they're way ahead of Ford, GM on that.
Yes.
That's why they're killing them there. You know, they have a superior product, a superior manufacturing thing. I mean, whatever you think about Elon Musk or whatever, I'm just telling you, Tesla is
crushing it.
Yeah. the example of how to be an Industry 4.0 company. You know, I mean, Volkswagen does well too. You know, and there's some other companies in there that are trying to get along there, but Ford struggles because Ford doesn't even own their software. Bosch owns it.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, so Ford pays Bosch for all their software. Tesla will improve their car while it sits in your garage. Ford has no ability to do that. If you have a recall, what do you do with your Ford?
You have to take it to the dealership.
Yeah, and then how long do they have it? How long does it take? What's going on? Yeah. What's your maintenance cycle like on a Ford when you buy it? Oil changes, stuff like that. What's it like on a Tesla? Tire rotation and cabin air filter.
And plug it in. Make sure you plug it in.
For 100,000 miles, you know. So it's just a superior product, you know. Even if the Cybertruck's a little ugly, you know, it's a superior product. So
you think it's ugly?
I would drive it.
I'd definitely drive it.
I would drive it because I want it to drive me around. That's what I really want.
Really?
Yeah.
So I like Teslas quite a bit, actually. I'm
a Jeep guy, so I'm.
Are you?
Yeah.
See, I like my truck.
I like to work on my cars constantly.
I like what the Teslas can do, like that instant power.
Oh, yeah.
I love that's great.
I drive an S for sure.
So, but the thing I do like about muscle cars or performance cars is that oomph that you get out of that engine. Like there's something about driving like a manual transmission 6-speed with the clutch and just having a great time.
Oh yeah, when this takes off, I'm getting a Z06 with the manual. 2019, last year the manual, man. I'm gonna collect that. I'm gonna collect it, black on black.
Oh yeah, I honestly I had a Ford ST. I really liked it. It was a great little hatchback. Focus
yeah.
ST, yeah, and it was a 6-speed manual transmission with a turbo. Oh boy,
yeah,
that little pocket rocket was.
I
loved
Mini
it.
Countryman in Italy. All-wheel drive Countryman, not as fast as that car, but I loved it, man. I'd whip around Italian streets and that, and then I'd hit the German Autobahn. So that's a car.
Would be a blast.
Yeah, that's a car that can do both. And your ST could too,
yes.
you know.
That thing
so
was
the little Italian streets, I could still park and stuff. I had a little town car because I liked my Mini, and Italians just beat the hell out of your car, man. Oh man, I slammed my bike in your car. Ooh, mi dispiace, you know, and drive away with smoking their cigarette with their umbrella on, you know.
You ain't gonna come back here and fix this?
Yeah, no, they don't care, man. They don't care. Like you drove that car, you made the choice.
Oh, there'd be. I don't know how long I would be able to keep my cool over there with that.
Black on black too, man. I was dents, dings in it all the time, so.
Good
I ended up getting a little Italian car, a little Fiat.
Okay, little Fiat. All right.
And I brought back my Fiat 500, my 1973.
You have it still?
Yeah.
That's a cool little car.
I'll take you for a ride. It's
Hell
a little
yeah.
tiny car. It's fun.
That's
fun.
Awesome.
It gets all kinds of looks, but you got to remember, if anybody hits you, you're going to die.
You are going to die. There's nothing in there to help you.
Safer on a motorcycle because you can at least be ejected from that.
It's so crazy. Yeah, you look at small cars. You remember the smart car?
Mm-hmm.
That thing, say if just an F-150, God forbid it's a trash truck.
Oh yeah.
There's nothing left.
Yeah.
It's dust. You know what I mean?
It's like flirting with death every time an F-350
comes flying by you.
Because I live in Rose Hill. So I'm coming in town at 55, and I'm on this 2-lane road, going into Andover, and they're coming by at 55. And
that
so,
air pressure pushing. Yeah,
if you drifted over the line and hit me, it'd be lights out for me, period, But, I like jacked up Jeeps, so that's normally what I drive, though.
All right, so, okay. So outside of work, you're a Jeep guy. You like working on your cars, things of that nature. What other little hobbies you got on the background?
I played rugby for a long time.
Right, you were talking about that.
Wichita team. I coached JV rugby some. I haven't mountain biked as much as I'd like to this year. Stay fit in the gym. Camp. Me and my son went camping this weekend. I like getting back to nature. Although, I'm ready to step up to a camper or something. This
done
ground
with this
camping.
tent shit.
Yeah. Like Nick's like, that's not how you camp. Dad's like, well, you'll when you're my age, you'll talk about it. I didn't sleep last night, Nick.
Yeah, yeah. No, I want one of my big ambitions in life as I get older is to get a really nice RV and travel the United States. I want to go through all the landmarks, just in travel east to west. Because with internet now, it's not like I need to be somewhere.
Oh yeah, do this with people that you meet.
I can, I could absolutely. And
there's interesting people out there, man.
They're everywhere.
Yeah,
you're freaking one of them, dude.
Yeah, well, there's way better ones than me.
This has been such a cool conversation. I know we're coming up on an hour and a half. This is the longest episode we've had.
Yeah.
And I know you have something going on today. I don't want to keep you for too long. So as we wrap up part 1 of what's gonna be many, I have one specific last question for you. It's a normal day. You get up, kiss the kiddos goodbye, getting ready for work. You leave the house, but today you run into 18-year-old Tony. You guys lock eyes. You're able to give him some advice. You can't tell him all the secrets. What do you tell that young man before he runs off and joins the Navy?
Fail fast.
Fail fast.
Yeah. If you want to do something, just start. Just start. And then you'll get feedback on whether you're doing it right or not, you know. A lot of people will get stuck on not starting. There's never a good time to start. There's never a good time to start a business. There's never a good time to, I mean, when I left for the Navy, people were like, no, stay for the summer or do this or, you know, go to college. It's not a good time. Like, no. That put me ahead in life, you know. And then when I got out of the Navy, people were like, no, don't get out, you know. What are you doing getting rid of this career? You're doing so good. It's like, no. You know, I wanted to go on. And then, you know, so just keep going, don't give up. And, like, if you don't give up, you can't fail. Right. So plain and simple. Like, if you keep trying, you never fail. You'll die and you'll, you know, might not look like a success to other people, but what's really being alive is trying and going towards a goal.
Yes.
If you're not moving towards a goal, you're not alive. At least that's how I feel, right?
Yeah.
So I never could climb into that with no goal in mind. So I always have this big goal where I'm going towards. And I've never gotten there, right? Because it always changes. I want to be a pro football player. Never landed that. I want to be a pro rugby player. No, I want to be a Navy SEAL. You know, I failed at that. But that process left me to realize that, oh, no, my goal is slightly different. And then you pivot to that goal. And then, you know, you don't always fail, but, you know, you don't always hit your 10-year goal, you know. But it gives you something to point at and then at least gives you something to start moving towards and then, you know, adjust.
That North Star.
Yeah.
That North Star is very important.
So.
Fuck yeah, Tony. This has been amazing, dude.
Yeah.
I'm so excited to see like the things that you're working on in the future. I know you're over at Grover Labs and you're doing your things there. I cannot wait to see the salt mines and all these movies that are down there. This has been probably one of my favorites so far. I could sit here and talk this nonsense for probably hours. I really could. But in the sake of time, and I want you to come back, and I don't want you to tell me everything right away. We're going to wrap this episode up of Networking with Nick with my man Tony here at GCE. And honestly, this has probably been my favorite one so far when it comes to the information and stuff that we're talking about. Other than that, get out there, shake hands, and meet people. It's so important. Goodbye.